Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today we want to have a real discussion about the changes that is taking place in the President Tinubu cabinet. A very important one that happened a few days ago when the coordinating Minister of the Economy and the Minister of Finance resigned, as it was said by the presidency. So we want to look at the implications of this and some of the dynamics around Nigeria's economic policies. To join me in that important conversation, I have a leading policy analyst, Mr. Ademola Adigun. Mr. Adigun, it's good to have you again on Inside Sources.
Thank you, sir. It's been some time.
All right, it's been a while, but this is good timing too. So,
Yes, sir.
What's your own take? Let's kick it off like that. What's your take on the fact that a very powerful member of the Tinubu administration had to step down and was replaced?
Yeah. Being honest, it wasn't unexpected. The trend had been there from last year, November, for most people, when it's seen the issues around movement around that ministry and information disseminated outside about a possible change. So I don't think anybody who is watching policy would have said it was unexpected. It was something that people expected to happen. And the point that people don't know, or I don't know, is the reason for it. Because for all intents and purposes, Mr. Oyedele was a stabilizing factor in the administration, and for most of us, a long-time friend of the president, based on what we read in papers. So when Mrs. Doris was brought into the Ministry of Finance, people started seeing that science again. When she was moved to the Budget and Planning Ministry, it was also there. And then when Oyedele came into the ministry, everybody would have said it's a matter of time. Because again, the whispers were already there. It was always filtering outside there. And it's funny, this was the first time I can recall that you have Minister of State under the Connecting Ministry of Economy's portfolio. Maybe it has happened before, and I'm not well aware of that. But it has happened.
No, but is now full minister.
No. I said yes. Before, I said the movements had shown. So he's not the minister now. I said, but before then, we had a minister. We didn't have anybody under Mr. Oyedele. He was Mr. CME, the Minister of State.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, Mr. of State was appointed, and the portfolio was divided.
Yeah.
A lot of power was taken away from the minister, given to the Minister of State. This was all public information.
Right.
And it now became more like a figurative minister of economy, where Doris seemed to be the proper minister of finance. So there was an anomaly in terms of the way it has always occurred in the country. And what we read in papers and what we heard didn't show there's a lot of confidence by the president in Mr. Oyedele at that time anymore. So there's nothing new. Then the change shifted again, and then they moved her out, and then things seemed to go back to normal. And then this happened. So I don't think it was unexpected, being honest.
Okay. So how do you think that kind of change, how do you think it will affect public perception?
The perception has been very bad because there are three ways people see it. Mr. Oyedele was the one that the face of the economy internationally. Imagine the day he was removed. He just came back from the spring meeting. On the day he was removed, he was one engaging with IMF, World Bank, the multilaterals, and donors. He's the one that Free Trading and Co have been engaging with. So one way or other, it brought some stability in terms of understanding and what to do, and a lot of conversations. Now, again, being fair, nobody's indispensable. We saw Mr. Obasanjo remove Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala at the point when we thought he was very critical and indispensable asset in those days. So it's nothing unrepeated. But in this case, the economy is still at a very tight place. So whatever reasons they had, I don't think that process was properly managed. I think it would have been better done. I think you've only got some few months of elections. You could have rode whatever winds and storms that there were onto election time. And then after that, you could have done your changes after then. And then it would have been a new baton. But maybe there are things we don't know that they know, or things they saw. And then the spin about him resigning, that was a very poor spin. Nobody believes them. I don't think the person typing the memo believes himself when he was typing that himself. But it's okay. This is what happens in public.
And I've made this point that the best way to have managed that would have been for the presidential spokesperson to be the one to announce. So if you announce it and we had it first from him and he says that he resigned, people are likely going to believe it. But if you look at the statement of from the SGF office, it even talks about the fact that there was need for synergy and better, effective.
Correct.
So already put that was wrong.
What was wrong? Yeah. So it was clear. And then you would have allowed him to go to the spring meeting and come back early that morning and start working on key matters of the economy. And then you would have done that maybe before he went and allowed somebody else to go for that. You'll have changed, or asked somebody to go with him. One of the problems we have in leadership in many processes, this communication gap and managing crisis. Crisis management can be a big effect on the economy and others. In more sensitive places where stock markets are very active, it could have caused a lot of erosion of trust in the markets and the others. And again, it takes some time.
But it didn't quite do that.
Because Nigeria has a kind of funny system that is not very...
our own emotional...
I do not... Nobody can fathom how this economy works. It works on the funny ways I can't understand. I mean, what you think would shock the economy, does shock the economy. What you think will shock the economy is already there. So I think if a minister in the US resigns, he might have more effect on the Nigerian economy than Nigerian minister resigning. But that's what it is.
Yeah. But let's look at some of the things that were in the public, just before Mr. Edward to leave. Number one, there was the issue of the budget, being rolled over seemingly endlessly. 2024 budget, roll over up to 2025 budget now has had to roll over, up onto up till June, although we now have a 2026. Now, how do you deal, with a lot of these issues, both nationally and internationally? How do you think that affects, the perception of government when it seems that there's a struggle around budget implementation?
It's a weakness, and it's a very damning statement on performance. The way we've been taught is the budget is the biggest policy statement of a government. When you say you're making a policy, the budget is your policy statement. It tells you where you want to go, what you finance, what you prioritize. That's what the budget is.
Yeah.
Over the years, and over several governments have managed to improve the budgeting process. Again, we can put the blame on three spaces. The inefficiency of the institutions like National Assembly, who allowed that to happen. Under the law, shouldn't allow that to happen. There's a fiscal discipline, all these things are there, all the fiscal laws are there. And these laws were signed and promoted by National Assembly. So why do they allow it? Why can't you collapse one budget and finish the budget and start on that budget? And then they also affected implementation. There were days when you see people camped in front of Ministry of Finance. You saw contractors begging for their money, carrying coffins and everything, and other things like that.
That was quite hard.
Yeah, but again, they were dying too.
Yeah.
They took loans to do the work and everything. And the whole process was convoluted and complicated, something that should be very simple. You would think a government who's had experience in managing a subnational, because Mr. Oyedele was commissioner in Lagos, wasn't he?
Yeah.
The president was the governor in Lagos.
For the first time.
Yeah, so all of them should have that knowledge and experience. It's not a new government per se that was totally green. So for me, it was a damning statement of inefficiency, ineffectiveness, and a lack of political coherence and synergy. And you couldn't blame the minister alone for that. That's a blame all of them have to take at the federal, at the executive, and at the legislative arm. It's their fault.
Although there are information in the public that some of the ministers in the cabinet had actually gone to complain to the president that they had no
capital.
I think the case of Professor Ali Pate was very open.
38 million naira relief.
Yeah.
It's a mess. And again, for me, that is an indicator of the thinking around...
Is it thinking of, or are we really struggling with resources indeed that we don't have? Are we so cash trapped in your view?
No, I don't think we're that cash trapped. I know by performance, in terms of revenue, performance has been lagging. Let me say it in a very simple way. We've decided to have a culture of deceit in everything we do. A culture of lying to ourselves, lying to our principals, lying to the economy, and everything. But you see, you can't lie and the economy responds to lies. You can say you have achieved budget sufficiency when you have not done that. You can't tell people that, we made this revenue target when it doesn't show in your bottom line. There has been no effort to curtail expenditure. There has been no effort to manage your current expenditure. There has been no symbolic effort to even show that you're aligned with the pains of many of Nigerians. That hasn't happened. And then when you now keep on going from one year to the other, rolling out and saying, oh, targets are done, and then the numbers tell you a lie. It's like when you go to a doctor and say, I feel normal, and your blood pressure numbers are terrible. You feel normal, but your blood pressure is telling you are very high. That's the numbers you can't see. So I think that's the challenge we had. And I think, again, it's that failure of honesty that is affecting us. Most projects are designed to fail by design. From my experience, whenever we are doing, for instance, the all revenue accrual, they just send a number that they think is realistic. This is how much you can produce based on what we have on ground. Somebody that doesn't know the figures says, jack it up. So if I say I can do 1.6 million barrels.
Probably in the National Assembly.
Probably even the presidency. Because maybe NUPRC or NUPRC majorly says, oh, we only do 1.4 million barrels. Then it gets to the presidency. Somebody says, this is too much small money, make it 1.7. But we have not done 1.7 in 5 years. No, we'll do 1.7. So you're projecting hope into a budget based on non-realistic. Then when it gets to National Assembly said, oh, your benchmark is too low. How can you have $65 for benchmark? Now, there's a formula that you should use for benchmarking. They will not use that formula. They'll just arbitrarily think, slam. Then when the budget is now even now approved by the president, they now goes to what we call the padding, which technically shouldn't be padding. But the only person that showed guts to challenge that process was Yar'Adua when he took them to court before he died. And that would have brought some sanity into the budget process. Because you can't plan for me. You know, I know what I am earning. So it's like a husband or a wife earning a money and somebody saying you are living on top. You don't know what I'm earning. I'm telling you what I'm earning. And that is the beginning of the failure of system. And then the agencies of government itself have lack financial discipline and fiscal discipline. A budget is a statement of intent. It's not a statement of actual. When you make a budget, you say, this is what I intend to, based on the reality that comes in. Now, how do you start awarding contracts based on intent? So that's what happened with the contractors. So a lot of MDAs, based on intent and what they felt was approval, and the insertions by our honorables and our senators and their constituency, whatever, 2 billion, 1 billion, they put in thing, then it comes. But then it's not funded. Something occurs. Tax revenue expressions don't happen. All revenue projections don't happen. All the projections come from VAT and other things don't happen. Then you have a fund that's not implementable. And then you have a problem. You have to prioritize what you spend money on. You've got to pay salaries. You can't ask to go on board. You've got to do other things. And then you think a government that's cash-strapped would think about creating new agencies of government. Or in fact, implementing the Reshuffle report, which they promised to implement. But when they said they implement it, I told my friends, I said, if they do that, I'm going to stop talking about Nigerian politics. But
that is certainly over 1 year now.
They cannot do it. There's
a committee that was set up.
Anytime there's a committee set up to do anything in Nigeria, it's not going to happen. A committee is a penalty of saying this will not happen anymore. It's a way of pushing your power to somebody to say, tell me also why we will not do it. So we have that issue. Then around the line, you are creating institutions everywhere. You are creating just everywhere. Take off grants. Everybody's creating a polytechnic, creating a university, creating something. How are we going to ever survive on that crisis? So it's a challenge.
But otherwise, you don't think that Nigeria is cash-strapped?
No, we're not cash-strapped. You see, we had cash challenges. I'll credit this government for one thing. I'll credit them. They've stopped the bad habit of printing money that we have experienced under the Buhari regime, which led to inflation and soaring destruction of the economy. But they haven't brought fiscal discipline into the process. You have to have fiscal discipline. You can't base a budget on borrowing above a certain ratio. Your borrowing numbers should not reflect more than, if you're borrowing for capital exclusively,
right,
then it's irrealistic. Then you're saying, okay, this budget is tied to a capital project, which will be completed under this year and under this synergy. But when it's convoluted, your financial inflows are not properly marked or properly delineated, then you have what this conversion we have. Why would a Ministry of Health have only 38 million for capital?
Yeah, that was what was released.
And the man had to say that because people were expecting to perform. And that's the kind of things you saw every day. And that's why you saw it was embarrassing when you see them, Minister of Finance every day. You see them with their drums, and it was really an embarrassment for government. Right. So they sorted that out really. And what I hear underneath is this. The agency is mandated to develop the budget and not the ones developing it. Yes, that's being truthful.
The agency mandated to develop the budget.
Mandated and not the ones developing it. You can't bring a budget from outside and give to a Ministry of Budget and Planning to implement. That itself will cause convulsions in your process.
So you mean that because there's a budget office?
There should be a budget office.
Yeah.
That exists in name.
Yeah, and actually, there is now a budget director.
There's a very experienced person.
Interesting.
But if you have a budget office, you have.
And that's Dr. Tanimu, by the way.
Yes, a very experienced former economic advisor of the government, somebody very capable, sound mind.
So you are saying that it doesn't seem as if he's the one that.
From the rumors we hear, the budget doesn't seem to come from his office. It comes from external parties, and they're giving to them, and everybody's now giving a budget. So how do you own something you didn't co-create?
Interesting.
So if you don't allow institutions to function efficiently, there are so many anomalies in this government in the economic management space. There are too many that for anybody, they could have done better than they're doing. But I think there's a high level of politics, a high level of issues that are really there, and a clash of powers. It's very, very funny.
Clash of power between who and who now?
Well, the elements. So because the way it's somebody done is, I mean, we had a tax reform, which was a good thing.
Yeah.
When you do a tax reform, it's led by the Ministry of Finance. This wasn't led by the Ministry of Finance.
Yeah.
That itself is an indicator of a big challenge.
I think that and I made this point in my take. I think and then I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No problem,
back, but I wanted to make this point so that you can also take it in alongside. I think that the president chose to rely on Mr. Zach Adedeji more, and of course Mr. Oyedele in that tax reform than the minister. And I think that was part of the point of dispersal where people knew that this thing wasn't going well. Because from what I know, very clearly, a lot of the president's actions, as a matter of fact, Zach was writing many memos that should normally come from finance. Look, it's not a rumor in this town anymore that they revert to Zach as the prime minister of the country. So that's just to
I'm glad you said what I can't say, but since you've said it, it is true.
Yeah,
and that itself is a crisis that's brewing. You see, I think our leaders need to think generational thinking and not think about traditional thinking, which is what they do about. It's a history. In Nigeria, when you look at budget reports, showing work, Lagos State remains the least transparent amongst many states. Because
Lagos State makes most money out of all
4 billion and everything because of the way they do things. So when you import a system such as that,
you mean Lagos State even currently or in the past?
Up to now, there's nothing transparent about Lagos State. I mean, Lagos State is opaque. Lagos people are different. They think they know everything and they overrate themselves. And when they
it's still the center of excellence.
Let's be honest, this is not center of anything. But that's another issue entirely.
Yeah.
But the point being made is this: you can't bypass national processes. You can't have the chairman of the National Revenue Service leading some issues. You can't have memos that should proceed from a minister of an economy coming from non-mandated people. It creates a chaos. And that's why president will say this, minister will say that, and what minister said and what president said doesn't tally because you're not thinking from saying him shit.
Yeah, that happened when they about
4 or 5 times.
Targets, yeah.
Yes, targets, expenditure patterns, and others. When you give people a job, you let them do the job. Now, if you have no confidence in them doing the job, take them out of the job.
Which has happened.
Possibly. We'll watch what happens on the next
going forward.
Yeah. So then do that. But don't create a system that creates chaos. This is design chaos. Properly designed chaos. And why people design chaos, the only reason why people throw up thieves come in the night is because it's dark and nobody can see what's happening.
Yeah.
When you want people to see what's happening, you allow it to be open.
Yeah.
And that makes it more efficient. And that will allow people to really judge. And it will boost the efforts that you are making. But for whatever reasons they're not doing that.
Now, and so let's talk about how that, this seeming chaos, which let's even say for the purposes of assumption and argument that the president wants to sort it out. That's why he said, okay, look, you go, let these folks, that I trust and depend on, let them do it. I mean, after all, they are the ones writing the memo. Let's just give him the job. Okay.
Why don't you bring him to be Minister of Finance? But go on, sir.
Yeah. But the point is that how does that affect the Nigerian? the average Nigerian, this kind of chaos, like you have described it, can we say that you can trace it to the level of impact in the,
maybe say the lack of impact. Maybe the better word is the lack of impact. Every time you try and show the headlines of this government reforms, and there are some headlines that are good.
Mhm.
Everybody will tell you, being power, we're hungry.
Mm.
Before I came in to this interview, somebody I met at the waiting room was like, this government is blah, blah, blah. Early in the morning, a cousin called me from Ife. He said, Egbo, Oleo, the poverty levels are astronomical and flying because there's no concerted strategy of translation of gains of the top into the bottom. If one thing they're feeling is lack of synergy and lack of coordination, and because there is no strategy. You have an ad hoc financial process, ad hoc economic process, which is more responsive, not coordinated, not synced, not sequenced, being impacted on Nigerians. And that's why many more people are entering poverty. I mean, you had noble intents. Taking subsidy out was something we'd all acclaimed for a long time. But there was no plan to mitigate the effects of taking it out. Devaluing the currency was something you needed to do to attract more investment, stabilize your currency, and stop printing currency. But what are the mitigating effects about that? What about social plans and others? So that, and who's funding that? All that lack of it is what has inflicted the greatest pain on Nigerians. And Nigerians are in pain.
Yeah.
Nobody can deny that. Even those of us that we call the so-called middle class, but we are holding it under. It's not, but nobody's really finding it. It's holding it under. We all try and squeeze ourselves around it. And it's clear. So until you sort out this economic coordination and ensure there's smoothness and efficiency within the system, then you can roll out plans to mitigate poverty. But if you don't, you still have these pains continuing. You still have the challenges you have already. You still have the down. I mean, so states are getting more money. Nobody's going to do that. But again, these states are not responsible for lifting up poverty. They transmit what you do at the top along your indices to them. And so you import food this period, you stop importing food, you do this, you do that. No synergy, no coordination, no economic strategy, no playbook. There's nothing I can read and say, okay, here's economic direction. So when we do this, we'll achieve this. When we do this, we'll achieve this. When we do this, we'll achieve this. When we think this is not working, this is what's remaining. It might exist on paper in the plans you had before you came to the government.
Right.
But in implementation, there's nothing.
Interesting.
And the agencies are failing. It's the truth.
Interesting that you also raised the issue that, of poverty and people living in harsher conditions. There's a video that is trending. I don't know whether you've seen it, of Mr. Taiwo Oyedele making a public speech and saying that, look, when people ask that, okay, has your life been better, since the Tinubu administration came into office or not? He says, of course, the obvious answer, like we have even discussed now, is that it has gotten worse. There is devaluation, and that affects, a lot of the things, that people buy. There is there's the problem that came out of this, removal of subsidy, that goes directly to living conditions. But he argues, as Mr. Oyedele in that video, he argues that it's a wrong question to ask whether your life has gotten better in the last 3 years, or, I don't know the date of the video. He argues that that's the wrong question. And this is his argument, and I want you to respond to it. He argues and said that, look, the situation could have been worse. That what was going on before the Tinubu administration came was that NNPC was not even paying any remittances anymore. There was, to make matters worse, advance, where they were looking for money, advance, or is it forward sales of oil, to even benchmark or try to be like what do they call it, the guarantee for loans. They were printing money, which we have now known, with Emefiele there, that if all of that, of course, subsidy had to go, and it's argument that if all of that weren't stopped, that the economy would have completely collapsed. So he said that is the wrong question. That, of course, the answer is what it is, but that the question is wrong to say we should expect things to be better. But that what the Tinubu administration has done is to sort out all those things, stop printing money. Try and see, stop the subsidy, so that there is no more leakages. And I guess, trying to see what they can do, getting NFPC now to get the money in and all of that. What's your response? I mean, you are an expert in this, man.
Well, it's funny because when I saw the video myself,
oh, good.
I saw the video. It's viral, as you said. My question was, why didn't you say this before you campaigned? Would you have voted you to tell us this is what you're coming to do? Let's be honest with ourselves. I mean, you can't start saying such things after. It's not your place to tell people that. They didn't ask you to tell them why their life's not better. They called you to not tell them the worst possible scenario. Your job is to tell people the possible outcome scenario that will come forward. So by asking people that they ask me a question, no, they don't do that. That's a bad and poor communications from anybody in leadership. When you are elected into leadership, your job and assignment is to give hope to people, telling them, "Oh, if you didn't do this, but that's why they voted for you." Why, if they knew you wouldn't make their life better, they would have tried that path and collapsed. But you didn't come in and collapse. It's a common thing.
Let's interpret that.
It means that if you're a deity and you can't change my life, leave me as I was. It's a simple thing. So that thing shouldn't be said, and it's comes from trying to defend the gains of the reforms. But the problem is people don't care about reforms. People care about the impact of their life. Somebody wrote a very lovely article yesterday on social media. Oh, this and everything. Guy said, okay, after you've said that, my fridge is empty. That's what the guy said. He said, look, my fridge is still empty. And if you say my fridge is still empty, that means you haven't translated your impact. So let's not stop about the question we're asking. Tell us the solutions you're making. Give us a pathway to where the benefits will be felt. Tell us this is the timeline of what you're doing. Introduce social safety systems in place. It's very simple and it's not very complicated. When you look at the aggregate income of a family, you look at where their discretionary spend. When you're trying to mitigate suffering, you take away discretionary spend around it. So if you've done something on education, saying, okay, for now funding and everything, what have you done on transportation? Oh, we said the LNG. Where are the buses? Where are the LNG plants? Where are the LNG gases? Where is it flooding the market? In Egypt, you can rent a car for $10 a day because of LNG. It's a truth. It's not
CNG.
CNG, sorry. Yeah. My apologies, CNG. Other things like that.
Yeah, we haven't seen the CNG.
So that's lack of coordination. So when you're taking a subsidy, which was a good thing to take out, that CNG should have been available. Even the crisis we had in Iran now, Nigerians would have been a little bit not as impacted as it is. One day I was buying fuel, and I had to pay 120,000 for a full tank. I cursed. My neighbor said, this money is so much money. And I want to people that supported devaluation and the regulation of the economy and everything. So I'm not going to stay, okay, but when you feel it, you know it. Yeah. So don't tell us the question you should ask. How much it was it could have been, but that's not how you met it. When Buhari left, there were markers and indicators. Now, we knew all you say might be true. But didn't you know about this path before you take it? If you can't bring a patient who is in a crisis situation and tell the doctor says, oh, if I didn't stabilize you, you'll have been dead. And when I'm dying, I came to you to save my life. So you're not telling me, no, if I didn't intubate you or put into coma, no, that's not what you tell the patient.
Very, 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 very important point. And, I felt when I saw the video that, okay, look, even if we grant that, just like you also said, where is the mitigating, initiatives indeed? Look, for instance, now, the social investment program thing, we've not had
totally collapsed. Totally gone.
I mean, so I see the problem of a bit of insensibility. It's like they are insensitive.
So let me interrupt you to say something. You see, when you have dialogues, people who are impacted, you can't, let me use a scenario that most can relate to. When you want to have a large project in the family unit, the head of family might call over and say, well, we need to cut down some part of our life. Some things have to change for us. Yeah. And because of that, because we want to build a house, so therefore, maybe meat once a week, maybe egg 2 days. He doesn't now start eating 5 eggs and 8 pieces of meat. There has been no attempt, not even a small, to show a correlation of the pains we are feeling and you in leadership. Your expenditure levels haven't changed. In fact, the oppression has gone to the point of it as a national part. You see elected and public officials highlighting their new cars. showing their new Benzes, their new Jeeps, their new S-classes, and their new crap. You see them displaying on social media. You see the way they try. People are upset and angry and hungry. You don't shove it in their face. You would say, okay, there's a pain. Where's the cut you're taking?
Right.
You see them in business classes when you're flying. Some of them in first classes. The parent makes an announcement. It doesn't happen. Doesn't change anything. So it's beyond the sensitivity. And I don't care attitude. And I don't care attitude in other places get punished during elections.
Yeah.
Because when people that level of sensitivity is too high.
Yeah.
It's too high. You still go. They went to London. They went en masse as if it was a jamboree. You think what is wrong with you? You're an economy suffering. You're going there to look for opportunities, and then you went to ostentatious display. You go to anything; it's the largest contingent that goes. There's no sign of cutting down. Every day there's 2 new essays, 5 new essays, 4 3 essays. Who runs the government like that? Bloated cost, bloated level of governance, and then shove it in your face. New cars, new jeeps. You drive around Abuja here is very annoying and embarrassing. The money you are paying, the police people that you are paying with your tax are shoving out of the road for somebody that is not paying any. It doesn't make any sense.
Interesting.
So there's no attempt to correlate the reality of most Nigerians with your leadership.
Yeah.
And it's a bad signal. The optics are very bad.
Yeah, but you see, but the flip side of it is that we haven't really seen, so I served in the Buhari administration.
Yes.
And one of the reasons why I get very critical with some of these things is that the kind of thing that we are saying now, that's what we said for 8 years. Do you understand? And so it can be very draining. That, okay, so for how long are we going to say this? But, Mr. Adimu, who says that we are not even seen from among the opposition. We have not seen any clear attempt to say that, look, these are the options. As a policy analyst, are you worried about that as we conclude?
I must say I'm frightened about that.
Oh, frightened.
And yes. And I'll say it on my own page on social media today. And last few days, I've been talking about trying to look at the gains of subsidy savings and how much more revenue is going to the states. Facts, not illusions. But everybody, when challenge me, is like, well, there's pain and everything. But the point I ask them is, where is the other party? Who is in that other space that you want to bring forward that's going to change your life? They're not thinking about anything. People are talking about the president's birthplace, his mother, and what do I care about that anymore? He's been elected, he's president, whatever you have is junk. Come and tell us what you will do differently.
Yeah.
Will Article reverse subsidy? Will they reverse the regulation?
Will
they do that? Mechi or Kokwanso, would they? Have they talked any economic plan, economic gain? Have they discussed how they will stop managing borrowing and reduce level of funding? Have they thought about any better economy? It's a different thing to even talk and not even do, which we've seen a lot.
Right.
But not even talk. All you are talking about is that they don't want INEC to register a party. They want INEC to party. Who cares about parties? You party, APC is P, ADC is D. They say PAC in Meiji. No issue. So, a lot of people are really disenchanted. And there's anger on the streets.
Yeah.
And I tell even Nigerians, my personal take is, Nigerians don't want change. I'm sincere. I said, if you want change, you won't be considering the options you have. You will look for an option that's better. They are there. So if you are considering options, well, say the same old thing. It's going to be the same old wine in different cup. Yeah. And the wine will taste the same.
Well, let's hope that the opposition is actually going to show us.
Which opposition?
Because, and this is part of the reason why some of us are arguing that, look, we must have a choice.
We must.
I think it was very important that said that, look, let the people choose which of the oppressors.
That's what I said. I said, let them choose their poison.
But there's one more thing. Quickly, I have just about 2 minutes left.
All right, sir.
Should we give the governors, that kind of leeway with the kind of money that they have? Don't they also have responsibility, especially in agriculture? Nothing stops them in education, in health. In those areas, the governors can make a change in their states. Should we just give them...
You're spying on my social media wall. Exactly what I've been saying. But people don't hear that. See, there's a thing about it. If I'm a Nigerian and I'm going to contest, I'll contest for governorship. Governors have nothing, no accountability. They roughshod the House of Assembly. Those guys are puppets. They don't do anything. They're not accountable to anybody. There are no NGOs here at the base. Just do everything.
No focus like we have on
everybody looks at one person. And meanwhile, there are elements of people who know what they're doing. There are some few states who have shown that they are capable of mitigating problems of their people. I expected states that were thinking about it during this period of the Iranian crisis, find alternative levels of transportation for their people, or not ways of working. I expect grains and other things to be done. But even state governments are trying some things. I mean, we decentralized power supply.
Yeah.
Has anybody taken up the challenge?
Well,
Maybe two.
Yeah.
Maybe the governor of Abia State and potentially Enugu is on the way.
Yeah, I think Anambra too.
That's the kind of things you want to see.
Yeah.
You want people to think about how you can solve it. You want them to think about, look, now there's a gas process. There's a gas program going on. Take advantage of it. All the AKB putting together. But you see, the point about it is that Nigerians themselves, we are more focused on politics and governance. Every discussion you have on issues is on politics, never on governance. And Nigerians can differentiate what politics is and what governance is.
Interesting. Well, so we are getting to the politics, even though it seems as if we never ended politics.
It's never ended, never.
But let's hope for the best. We keep on pushing. Keep on talking about these issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Ademola Adigun, policy analyst.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your views. Thank you for the insights.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for coming to Inside Sources.
Thanks.